guys. It's a week after, not a week, it's almost a week after Halloween. It's Tuesday. I'll be honest with you, this is kind of the meat and potatoes of it. Let me share screen two here. Let me move. That's just files I use for printing. That's also a Discord I have for printing. Don't worry, I'm not doing anything illegal. You get to peek into my world, and that's okay. Where's slideshow? So this week, essentially for labs, is going to be like the meat and potatoes of what this class is kind of all about, if that makes sense. I can't even see you guys. Give me a second. Show meeting. Let me move this over. There we go. That's better. So, like I said, this week will be the meat and potatoes of it. TikTok AI voice. No, I don't have a TikTok AI voice. Sorry. I don't think I do. And it'll get a little hairy, I'm not gonna lie. Making me a pain in the butt, but we'll get there. So this is just gonna go over installing it. Next will be more lecture about it, if that makes sense. And I just remembered, next Tuesday's a holiday, isn't it? Don't everybody talking once.
Is it?
Yeah, it's Veterans Day.
That's Veterans Day. Yeah, you're absolutely
Our
right.
11th day of the 11th month. World War One ended and it was finally official. So we're not going to have class that day, which means you're only getting a lecture next week on Thursday, and then the labs will just be old recorded labs. So congratulations, you earned a night air quotes technically off. So I won't be here Tuesday, but you guys are more than welcome to show up. This room will not start, so you can just sit here for 15 minutes if you want and say you were here. That's a joke. You don't have to be here. So, anyways, you all ready to dive into this and get started and see how long it's going to take us to get through 56 slides of install pictures
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and configuration stuff? Yay, configuration. So, here's what we're covering. FTP, file transfer protocol. It's been around for God knows how long now. Domain controller, which I discussed a little bit last time as a diagram, right? Where you're going to see the nuts and bolts of how to install it. Then AD, which is paired usually with the domain. So you can create users, which we'll do more towards unit three, or sorry, 4 or 5-ish, where we make users, you set up times it can log in, you disable a user, things like that. So you get a real feel for what it's like to be an administrator. This is why I kind of had to make at least 40 gigs of space for it, because profiles take up space. One of the biggest issues I run into personally is for these Windows 11 updates, our machines are still active. There are Windows 10 that aren't a security risk, air quotes. Um, we have to make at least 60 gigs of space to install stuff, right? Well, the problem with that is a lot of users have a lot of stuff. They know they're not supposed to save it locally, but their hard drive balloons from 20 gigs, or hard drive, their profile balloons from like 20 or 12 gigs to like 40 plus gigs. And when you have a 256 gig hard drive, you have like 8 users, you have like almost no space. So and it becomes a question like, all right, who hasn't been here, who hasn't logged in a while, who's not going to be in the station for a while? So those are the kind of back end things you kind of got to get figured out as well. So it all kind of goes hand in hand. So in the end of the day, you're just helping people out, right? That's kind of the point. And well, supporting a business or whatnot or wherever you work. So let's talk about what FTP is. FTP is a network control protocol for transferring files between computers over really TCP with IP attached to it. It be a connection, right? You log in with an IP address, you connect to it, you can drop a file, you can pull a file. It's kind of like a repository is the best we can describe it, or a giant file cabinet you can open, grab what you need, put something in it, close it, and lock it, and you're good to go. Each FTP login usually has a unique login. So there's usually different username and passwords you can use for it too. It just depends how you set it up. So FTP users' ability to perform large file size transfers. So, an email is what's the biggest size you can send something in an email without zipping it. Don't cheat. Anybody know? Just general, regular old email. It's 25 megabytes. Standard. Anything bigger than that, you need to share it via drive or, send it via flash drive. Mm. But for example, if you're dealing with like large data files, FTP is a better way to go. You would just set it up on the server, have them log in, put whatever you need there, and then they grab it. Kind of like almost for Google Cloud, if you know how to work with one or used one before. You know how many of you have a cloud account and use it regularly? Yeah, it can hold huge amount of files, right? Depending on the size and all that. But you can store, well, right? You can store anything bigger than 25 megabytes easily. Yeah, Chase, I was the same way. I'll be honest with you, but I kind of got over it when it came to like just using 3D files. They take up so much space. It's cheaper for me to have a cloud with 2 terabytes. I dump whatever I want in there, which is more like 4 terabytes, and I can pull and grab things constantly versus it's all on my drive. So the difference is on cloud, it's constantly backed up by the provider, and if it crashes, they have a backup of it from like a day and a half ago usually. Versus if you don't do your backups every month and it dies, you're kind of out of luck, unfortunately, unless you want to pay out the nose to get those data files recovered. But tomato, tomato, I guess you can take the risk and save the money, or you can have someone else deal with it, and you don't get a headache. So just kind of how it goes. So how many types of FTP are there? There's regular old plain old FTP without encryption. By default, it uses port 21. This way, port 21 is very important on the network, and it is supported by the majority of web browsers. So that's usually what's running around on the front end of things for most websites, for like grabbing picture files or whatnot. Like I'm trying to think of a good picture repository off the top of my head. Can't think of one off the top of my head, to be honest with you. But well, I guess Imager can be considered that because it doesn't really have you do anything. You can copy and save the file instantly. Photo Bucket. There you go. That's one I haven't heard in a long time. But I think that uses FTPS because you have to log in as a username. You can't just nilly willy go browsing. Well, I guess you can, but what I'm trying to get at, there's some that have you log in, you have more access versus the standard ones have just it's there in the wild, you know. Have you seen the old kind of indexing sites where you can just click on things and it'd be files? Haven't heard what, David? Sorry, my phone just buzzed. Photobucket. Yeah, I haven't used Photobucket like in 10 plus years. So FTP-ES, moving on here. Well, hold on, let me rewind the clock and talk about FTPS. Refers to FTP secure or secure socket layer SSL because this kind of FTP server uses SSL encryption. You guys know what SSL is? It's standard like on every website now. It's slightly different than traditional FTP. The primary difference is the security that comes with FTPS, which was the first type of encrypted FTP invented. So that's the only difference. So FTPES, the E in FTPES means explicit, making the acronym stand for File Transfer Protocol over Explicit Transport Layer Security, or TLS/SSL. This type of FTP begins, like regular FTP using port 21, but then special commands upgraded to a TLS/SSL via encrypted transmission. Because it tends to work well with firewalls, some prefer to use FTPS over FTPS. Personally, I don't use either at work. It's rare, but I know we use them more for contractors when they need access certain files or stuff you can drop for them in a repository. Outside of that, we don't really touch it. It's just all there. It's handled more by our networking team than it is by us. So let's move on here. So let's talk about installing it. So remember that splash screen we see on our server when it launches and it starts up. It's the first time you see it when you power it on. That's where we start from. You can do it that way. It's usually quicker. You go to add roles and features. You click it. This is what we'll be doing in the lab. Don't worry, but this is just showing you how the whole process is. It's just what these slides are. It's, I mean, I got a lecture on this stuff, but you'll see it more in the sense when we do hands-on. That's why I kind of show it to you this way. So you just have to select role-based. So it's a role you're going to be implementing, right? You're not going to be implementing a remote desktop service at all. Pardon me. It's role-based because that's you're adding a role. Remember, servers can do more than one thing. So you're only going to see one on this screen, which again we will see when we do the lab. There'll be your server's name, the IP of your server, and they'll just tell you what it's running. So pretty straightforward stuff so far, right? If you have more than one server on there, I would be very concerned because you shouldn't, because you only have one. Unless you made a backup server, then that's totally up to you. Whoopsies. My mistake. Didn't mean to click that. So you'll be greeted with this screen after that. And this is the one you would check off, right? But you have to check off this web server IIS. It needs it to run. That's the main reason. And then you have to configure it a little bit, which I will get into right now, which can get kind of dicey because it'll act like the website air quotes that you're hosting doesn't work, but in reality it does. You just have to access it via FTP to function. So you can add the features, pretty straightforward. It's the console, it's gonna be more pain in the butt too. You click it, takes you to this screen, and see, there's your role. FTP, right? We want server, service, and extensibility. Management tool sure to be clicked. And you hit next. I know. Seems pretty straightforward so far, right? Then it's going to install. Normally, it says you would check off restart the dash to ensure automatically if required. I would just restart it. Every time you add something to a machine, this is from back in the day, like Windows 95, even up until probably XP, when you would install any kind of driver, even a server or service for a server, regardless, even you can modify Windows, right? You can add features. It still doesn't, it says you shouldn't restart, just restart it. It's better that way. Just trust me. It flushes whatever's running in the RAM or in the background, and then it comes back up normally. So you don't have to worry about it. So I would suggest when we get to the screen, which we will be getting to on Thursday, you would just hit install, then you would just restart it after and go from there. So after that, you go to the console. The management console we installed, right? So you would add the FTP site. So that's the part I was thinking, telling you that can be kind of a pain. So you would add from there. Agree with this. You can name it whatever you want, but you have to path. You guys know what pathing is, right? Or no? I don't mean like a trail, well, a physical trail. You guys know what pathing is, right? We path before? Okay. Pretty simple. So it's where you want to point to where you grab your stuff or save your things. You can, C drive or D drive, whatever you have in there. You would hit next. Then the IP address, it's probably going to be the only one your server has. And yes, we will have to check this off. No SSL. The reason being is we're not really going to need it. We're not going to do anything crazy because then you have to get into more deeper configurations, which we're not going to do for this class. That's what you would be sharing. Yes, that's part of the lab. But we'll get there. We'll get there. This is just me explaining what we're going to be doing because that's what this is. I talk about more in depth of the back end of it in the next unit. This is just more of the physical preparation for the lab because you got to see it first hands on to understand it. Then we can talk about everything we did or are going to do rather in this sense. So then here's where you have to have authentication, right? Basic authentication. Anonymous is doable, but I won't have you guys do it. Then you have to make a group. What permissions do you want? This should look pretty familiar for permissions. If you've done the share file lab, remember you had to give permissions to users? You either have users read, write, or just look at it, which is just read. You couldn't edit. Remember, I had that issue in the lab last week. I'm like, all right, I had to add myself to the group and all that stuff. Here you're making a specific group for users that you would, quote, create or log in as so you can grab files. Does that make sense so far? Clear as mud? Confused? Not confused? Like, why are we even going through this?
So instead of making everybody have like their own username and password, you just give the username and password of the one group, and then they would just, oh,
Right.
okay,
And it's
okay.
just for the lab. But if you were doing this like for a business and you had multiple clients, you would have, they can be anonymous if you really wanted that, but basics a little more, I guess, air quotes, secure in the sense you can name it after each different company. So you have one that's like the landscaping company, then you get access for, I don't know, receipts. The other one could be like a catering company and things like that.
Okay.
And you can have shorthand like abbreviations. I forget how many characters it can only be. There's a certain limit. I don't remember off the top of my head. So we create that, then we're greeted with this. My FTP home. Okay. Great. That means it's up and running, even though it will appear like it's not up and running, because a lot of you, even me, will probably do it. Or I'm going to punch it in the browser. I'm like, oh, wait, that's not how we connect. You got to connect through File Explorer. It's just how we've done it. But if they're outward facing, there's a different way to connect, but we won't be doing that because we just don't have the resources for it. And I don't want you to melt on your machines. So you would make a new group again. And that's where the FTP group that you air quotes created originally, this is where you would add all the users and stuff in this one. Descriptions, yeah, if you want. I mean, just my FTP users, pretty simple. Add that you can click whatever comes afterwards. I believe it's just people. So yeah, this should look familiar on the next screen. And there it is. The administrator account. I know this is kind of winded. We're getting there. After that, takes you to this screen because it's going to check the names. You have to check the names in order to reference it within your machine. That's pretty straightforward. So in order for you to get his own user directory, I'm sorry, his own directory, and not have access to other files, because you don't want to be sharing files with other people, right? Other people you want to be there. After connecting to the server, it is necessary to set up isolation. To do this, open the FTP site settings, which we will be doing, and under user select the username directory, click apply. So it gives you different options. It's not that great to see, but it's there. And you would add a virtual directory. It's the same thing you did before. Thinking right now. Tell you what, I have an idea. An idea so massive, it might make my head explode. What if I cover the lecture for next week as well for Tuesday, which would be for Thursday, right? And next Thursday we just have lab instead after I finish these slides. What do you guys think? Okay, it'll just be a lot of brainy information, and then we'll have it in action. Sound good? I will take that as a resounding yes. So, and there's a lot of screenshots. I get it. So aliases, you would just put your cloud admin or whatever you want to call it. I will probably have you guys name an admin. I name an admin. It makes my life easy. You just click OK. This is just, again, set up, install. To configure the permission IIS manager, this is, again, where it gets tricky. You add permissions, click on security, click advanced, and then you get this pop-up. You would want to disable inheritance. It just has you do it. It's just how it's been set up forever. You click apply, click A-OK, because you don't want the cloud admin, air quotes, to get all the rights of the admin you have that are for the server. They're kind of separate entities, if that makes some sense. Because the ones, air quotes, taking care of cloud, they're the ones taking care of the local machine. Or you can combine them if you really want to. That's up to you. It's your machine. Do what you like. But see, you've seen this before. I did the sharing part for the folder. This is what it looks like on the back end. Edit, you remove, add, whatnot. Oh, hold on. My Steam should not be active. Let me close Steam. Let me close another program. There we go. So we go next. Yeah, the user has full access. Again, we'll be doing all this. See, Cloud Inst down there. Click apply. Select whatever permissions you want, which would be full control. Click apply. I know, boring stuff. Then we have to configure the firewall. I know it's been a lot of steps, right? It's a lot of things to do just to get FTP to working or to work. It'd be inbound rules. You do a new rule under event security. Then you hit next or whatever comes up. Then you label it predefined. It should already have the rules. It should be there if you look it up. You click on the drop down, you should see FTP server. You just check it off. So they kind of make it easy in that sense for the firewall. Before it wasn't that easy. You kind of had to manually create these. This was back like circa like Windows 2000 era, which was technically the first server OS, if you really think about it, for Windows, which was really hands-on and a lot of stuff wasn't that fleshed out. But this was probably one of the greatest things they did in 2008 when they had Server 2008 being the main thing after Server 06 got sunset. So this was nice. They included server rules that are already predefined, which means they already pre-made the rule. You just check it off. You don't have to go digging through hours of text to just figure out what you want it to do for configuring a firewall. This is a software firewall. This isn't a hardware firewall. That's a different beast. So you would allow the connection, right? Because that's what you want to do. If you're using SSL, it would be the second one, but we're not. We're using this one. So you hit next. And this is what we're going to be greeted with next time you connect to it. So see how it says through Explorer? That's not through Internet Explorer, guys. It's through your file browser. And that's how you would connect. And then you would just put in the name and password and you're done. That's part of the lab. We'll be doing that too. And like we did before, we're just dropping a file in, right? Pretty straightforward. And you can just share something in there. So that's all I really have right now for FTP, but we'll cover more right now in the next part of the lecture. Do you guys want to take a quick break right now? You guys want to keep going? How are you guys feeling other than just hearing me talk every 5 seconds right now? Keep going. Okay. All right, let's dive into domain controller and server configurations. Oh, actually, let me grab something real quick over here, not there, but the file I needed. Let me pull up my browser. Here, let me grab something. Give me a second. Just download the next set of slides we're going to need. That's all. Okay. Maybe we'll do that now, then have you guys wait a little longer. So after that, your FTP is configured. Congratulations. Then we get into domain controller. That's the second part of what we're going to implement for Thursday. And that might take up a lot of time as well. FTP shouldn't take too long, but I will try my best not to fly through it. Okay. So we can all follow the same steps and just go from there. At this point, you won't be downloading any ISOs or anything. So there's nothing to download for Thursday. I would have made that announcement even by today if I had to, but you guys should be okay. So domain controller is defined as a type of server that processes requests for authentication from users with a computer. Controller attributes. Domain controllers restrict access to domain resources by authenticating users' identity through logging credentials and by preventing unauthorized access to those resources. So remember I described it like a bouncer, essentially, letting you in or out of a club, trying to get in, show your ID, yes or no, kind of deal. It's similar in that regard when you break it down to layman's terms. So I try not to make this stuff too complex when explaining it. So you need an ID to log in and log out. Again, you will have that kind of thing at work if you go into the IT world. Skills, same thing with cybersecurity. You have an ID with the credential and all that. And you have higher rights, you have higher admin privileges as well. So domain controllers by security policies to request for access to domain resources. A domain controller can operate as a single system, but they are usually implemented in clusters for improved reliability and availability. So someone give me an organization that isn't school, something, anything, government, non-government, doesn't matter. Someone give me something. Amazon. Okay, let's go with Amazon. Amazon has warehouses, right? We all buy stuff on Prime. We get stuff within 2 days. I know, I get it. So I guarantee you, each of those warehouses has a central, not mainframe, but a server in the warehouse or a couple that handle the inventory for that specific server in their own domain. Does that make sense? So it's like one giant domain for Amazon that handles warehouses. That's why Amazon Warehouse Domain or AW, what we call it? AWD, I believe is what they would name it. .org or com, whatever they are, because it's commercial. Then they're all linked together, right? They're all that one domain, so they can cross-reference each warehouse and each database that's built within it. That's how it usually works. But then we have a separate one that handles like all the cloud-based stuff. AW Cloud. That's its own domain. Org is organization, but it'd be com because they're a commercial entity. If I remember right. Orgs or EDUs are usually different domains. It can be either, to be frank, but I have a feeling Amazon does .com because it's commercial. So this is what it looks like. We've seen that picture, right? We've seen this different picture before. Similar concept. Domain controller. Clients. Here was our members. They had no more different resources. Same kind of deal. Plugging a domain controller is very important. It mediates all access to the network, so it is imperative to use additional security mechanisms such as firewalls, security isolated networks, security protocols, and encryption to protect stored data and data in flight. When it refers to data in flight, means data being transmitted. Restricted use of insecure protocols such as remote desktop protocols on controllers. So essentially, the only people that should remote to the domain controller are just the higher level admins. Not even power users shouldn't get it. Like again, so someone in finance be able to access the domain controller remotely? No. People on the IT team should be the only ones with access. Right? Like who, let's put it this way, who shouldn't have access to the domain controller? Somebody give me something. Interns, I don't think should have access. Customers, teachers, yeah, you get it. General public, right? Teachers, ah man, I've seen some teachers with technology that know what you're doing. I've seen others with technology that think they can use a rock to fix it. So, it's kind of a dicey one. So, where was I? Deployment in a physically restricted location for security. Yeah, I mentioned that. Servers have to be secure, right? It's not just a rack in a room. It's there a lock, is there a biometric reader, things like that. So again, custodians are not picking on them, but they shouldn't have access to it either. So expedite patch and configuration management. So you got to patch. There's vulnerabilities, right? I mean, there's been 0-day vulnerabilities for God knows how long. You just hear about it more often now than ever. What's the most latest 0-day vulnerability you've ever heard of? Come on, give me something. The one I heard of was from WinRAR like a couple months ago. I use WinRAR a lot for zipping files, and apparently it has a 0-day vulnerability, so I had to install it at work, which is fine. But it's just like great. And I'm using the built-in Windows WinZip, and I hate it. It's very restricted in how it should be. So. But patching is important. Microsoft patches stuff every Tuesday, right? How many you get updates on your computers? We all do. I have something pending right here, right now that I don't even want to install because I'm sure I'll break something. But you got to patch it. Security concern. Windows 10 is end of life, right? They're not going to patch it anymore unless you pay them big money so they can put you on a specific list and install some special software that says this is allowed to be patched Microsoft. And I heard from what I was being told, patches won't roll out till December for Windows 10 because of the whole rollover right now happening to Windows 11. So, I mean, that's something you got to take in consideration as well. So, for example, we're on server 2016, right? Server 2016 is no longer supported, but it's lightweight enough that all of you can install and run it. I mean, that's great. You can use it for a home server, that's fine. But if you want to do anything more than that with it, you probably can't. So anybody have any questions? Are we good? Not good? Confused? Is it making sense? Clear as mud? Anybody? Okay, I will keep going. So you should block area access for domain controllers. Yeah, to an extent. They do need to be patched, so they can only have a pipe in, but it's for a very limited time because it can be a big security concern. So let's move on. So Domain control is a function of Microsoft's Active Directory. We will be implementing AD. It'll be a lightweight AD. It won't be anything too crazy. Don't worry. We'll be okay. The domain controllers and servers that can use Active Directory to respond to authentication requests. The slides are already there, George. They're under the week 3 unit slides. Active Directory is defined as a database and set of services that connect users with the network resources they need to get their work done. It's true. AD is just, I've showed you a picture of AD, a picture of it. The next one, you'll see it. Active Directory stores information about objects on the network and makes this information easy for administrators to use to find, for users, sorry, to find and use. Moron. This is what old school AD looks like. It still kind of looks that way. Now it's just kind of bubblier, if that makes any sense. People like this weird bubble effect around it, but it is AD from like circa like 2000-ish, 2006. But it's the same. It still looks that way. But under users, you can see the user icon's a little bit different. They still use that user icon, by the way. You will see it when we use when we set up all of this later this week. So nothing too local. Sorry, trying to get this up. So Active Directory also includes a set of rules, the schema that defines the case of objects and attributes combined in the directory, the constraints and limits on instance of these objects, and the format of their names. So they're all named differently. So you can see there's administrators, right? Insert publishers. You need to have those when you have different kinds of servers. DNS admins, DNS update proxy, domain admins. There's a bunch of different kinds of admins already. Domain computers, domain controllers. I didn't get the rest of the picture, but there's a bunch of different things within each folder. But that's just for users. Those are clusters of users. I don't know how many users are in that file per se. Anyway, a query and index mechanism so that objects and their properties can be published and found by network users and applications. So let me remote into work super quick. I will show you how to search something on AD. So give me a second. This will take a minute while that's running. Pray they don't yell at me about it, which I doubt. So give it 2 minutes, and I'll get back to it. I'm trying to think which of my coworkers I can just look up. Don't matter. I'm sure I'll find their account regardless. Anywho, let's move on here. So we've seen it before, right? Active Directory, domain controllers in the middle. And those are all the resources on AD, right? I mean, on the domain controller, on domain. Printer, what's this? Server, computer, user on a computer. So they're all part of that, right? Pretty straightforward. So what's it look like when you install it? It's the same kind of way almost installing FTP in the sense it starts on the splash screen. You add a role, right? Because you're adding a different role. I said before, a server can be more than one role, right? It can do more than one thing. It can be an email server, an FTP server, an AD server, and domain controller. It can do a lot of things. It just depends how powerful the machine is. So we already did one of the parts that we're going to need to do later, but remember we have to set our IP to static on our server. You've done that for the lab, right? We did that. Most of us have done it, so we're still working on it. So the reason being is you want to have a static IP so you can always reach the server. Yes, you can use the server name. Most 9 times out of 10, you're going to use the IP regardless. And it's just for a security reason. Only, if you have the IP set to static, only the IT department should know it and nobody else because no one else needs it. Just you guys. You're the ones using it. But that's why I had you guys set it to static way ahead of time. Also, if it's not static, setting up AD can be kind of a pain in the butt and it can cause a lot of headaches. So that's a big part of it as well. So it's the same deal as before. You would begin your install, you would add the roles and features, you hit next. Keep going. It's role-based, right? We've been through here before for FTP. You'll only have one server. So far, it looks the same, right? Nothing's changed for the first 4 screens. The only part where it's going to be different is here, where you're going to select AD domain services. So when it does this, when you install this, this is what it look like. You're going to add this feature. You're going to want the management tools as well, by the way. We'll check that off. So we'll hit next, it installs it, then you get back to this screen. It'll need that framework, which should be there once you click it. It should install it. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. So you're get greeted with this, and this is AD. Azure is AD. It's still AD regardless, just cloud-based air quotes. You would hit next. You would need to restart because look at everything you're installing. It's not just that. There's also, I believe, DNS will get piggybacked into this after it. And that's where it can get hairy. Remember how I mentioned that you have to set your Windows 10 machines or DNS to the IP of the server. This is why it needs to be static as well. It's because now this will take over from your network, air quotes, for the virtual machines, for your server and your Windows 10 machine to have a domain name service because you're going to be part of this domain because you're going to add it to the domain. I know, I know. It's complex. Sounds complex. It can be dicey, but we'll get there. So you install this, you would restart your server afterwards to make sure it all took it. Then you just hit next. I believe in one of these a picture of an error you're going to receive. It's a common error. So see, this is DNS. You promote to the main controller at this point. It installs everything. You just wait because it can take a bit. So you would hit next. So you would add a new forest because it's a new domain, right? You don't have a domain controller existing domain. No, you don't have a new domain to existing forest. You haven't done any of this before. So it would be this, and then you would name it. I forget what we're going to call it. We call it fall25.lock or whatever. It doesn't really matter, but something you have to remember. You hit next. Then you go to this screen. Global catalog's fine. Then this right here, make this a password you can remember. Reason being, if you can't remember the domain controller password, you're kind of host. Then guess what you would have to do? Scrap the server and start over, which sounds easy, but you'll be doing the same steps again. It can get tedious and become a headache. Just make sure you write it down somewhere in a sticky or write down a notepad on your regular PC and keep it separate. So after that, this part, yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be grayed out anyway. You're gonna hit next. Yeah, this is just a warning. That's right. Because we're going to set up a DNS server because it's configuring AD and it's configuring the domain. This can be saved. You can ignore this. So yeah, this is the one I was worrying about. So you hit next. NetBIOS needs to have one you call it test or whatever, it won't matter. Or you can have it named the same thing. So these are the 3 files created for an AD database. And I guarantee you this will be on the midterm. You might want to make a note of that. I will ask you, what are the 3 files created during an Active Directory install? This right here is what I want to see. Database, log files, and system volume folder, or folders, sorry. These are the folders. Nothing else, nothing different. You may want to write that down. Yes, I'm just giving you a free 5 points or 2 points, or whatever it's worth on the midterm. So congratulations. Good, it's not going to be hard. Then you're going to review your options of everything you installed. So it's just going to give you everything back you did before. Pretty straightforward. Can't do that, so it's not grayed out for that reason. Then you're going to get this. This is the fun part. You see all of this. Don't freak out. You just hit install. It takes its sweet time. And you're greeted with this. Once it's installing, it grays out mostly. It just runs. It'll be done eventually. Then it should restart after that. And when you're done installing it, you have new tools. You will have all of this here. And that's how you install that. So that's that for these slides. Let's take, what time is it? 10-minute break sound good? Then we come back 6:45, do the next set of slides. And we go from there. All right. So see you all at 6:45. Let me pause. So reach into those slides. Let me get the other slides going here. Nope, wrong one. Try that background for a segundo. Let me go downloads folder, which is not here. Of course it didn't know the right. Whatever. There we go. Since next week we will not be meeting for lecture, let's just get that out of the way. So, what are we covering? We're still covering the same stuff. I know. It's Active Directory groups, group policies, which are go hand in hand kind of. Group policies are usually called GPOs. They're what lets you, control who has access to what, who can do what, who can get to where, that kind of deal. And server configuration for DNS. So I talked about AD. So it's a collection of objects, right? Groups that include users, computers, other groups, and AD objects. So type of groups can you have? You can have for security principles. You can have, network share folders. You can create a security group, that kind of deal. So distribution groups, this type of group is used to create email distribution lists, usually used in Microsoft Exchange server. We will not be doing that because actually Exchange has technically been sunsetted. And what do I mean by that? Exchange is no longer what's considered on-site. It's now off-site in the cloud, and Microsoft handles it. So that's a contract you have to get through them and all that jazz. I will not have you guys implementing this because we're not going to really use it. A lot of small businesses still use this, but a lot of them are moving to the cloud solution. Sorry, text message. Wife, anywho. So it's this principle here. It's where email sent to such groups will reach all user recipients in the group. The type of group cannot be used to provide access to domain resources because they are not security enabled. So it just depends on what level security you want to give the certain groups. So users, regular users, to have basic access, right? They want to have admin rights to install anything. Power users would have some admin rights, like, oh, I don't know, try and think of like who. In the school settings and the backend settings, I'm referring to like departments and stuff. Financial would have power user rights because they have to get to certain files and do certain things, as would administration in terms of your student records, right? Because your grades are all stored somewhere. So I need specific kinds of software to do things, or run reports, or run queries. You know, how many of you ever had to grab copies of your transcripts from Reset, for example? Do you have to do it physically, or can you do it through a thing called Paperport? Parchment now? Sorry, it's called Parchment. Paperport's what we use for printing. It's a different kind of software that we're implementing. Parchment, yeah, Parchment's all digital now. Back in the day, it was all physical, so it was kind of pain in the butt. Anywho, but they have certain rights, just like students. Unfortunately, you guys can't really install much, right? All the machines are locked down for a specific reason for security. I'm just holding my hands, so my hands hurt, and that kind of deal. So again, just think of it in terms of groups. Everyone's in a different form. Oh, that's right. We're going to check on. So show you what AD looked like. My bad. Look at me remembering all late when I'm in the next unit. My machine's been beeping, just staring at me. Let me get that going, and I will show you what AD looks like. Which I technically show you. If this ever says let me in. Sometimes quarter century. I'll check out again a little bit. So let's move on. And group scopes. So let's keep going. Domain local. Used to manage access permissions to different domain resources. We talked about this prior. Files, folders, and TFS permissions, remote desktop access, providing window privilege rights, also mentioning who guys can do what, using GPO security filtering, etc. Only in the domain where it was created. A local group cannot be used in other domains, however. A local group may include users from another domain. A local group can be contained in another local group, but it cannot be added to a global group, which means they're kind of seashelled out. So they're in their own little bubble. Does that make sense? Is it confusing? Or it's like, what are you talking about? No, anybody? Everybody? Close. Thanks. One. Okay, I'm remoting into my work PC so I can show you guys AD. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not it. Close that. It's fine. Work related. And where's my AD? Ta-da! This is my AD. And look up the user. Let me smooth this over. So you saw this before last time. Y'all can see it, right? I was poking around in here. There's our domain, there's our accounts, and all that. So if I want to search for a user, this is what AD's search looks like. Okay. Yes, we have video assurance for cameras. That's not what you're thinking. For security reasons. So let's switch this guy. I'll do the whole organization. I'll just type in my coworkers lane. Oh look, can't find him. Isn't that nice? It's a space. It's very oops. It's very punctual. These are students. I won't share their info, but this is my coworker's information. He's not going to care. I already asked him. So see, it tells me first name, last name, there we filled out. That's his office number. Don't worry, that's an email. Address, work address. Everything else is our domain. We'll see all this. This is what the profiles look like. That's how they're stored. Organizations, us, remote control, and just all these kinds of things. So this is what AD looks like. So makes sense. We're good. We're not good. Looks good. Kind of not good. Anybody? Anything? Okay. Hold on. White to message. Okay. So let me close. Actually, I need to leave this up because I need to do something later, but do it after. All right. So domains we talked about, right? Used to manage access permits to different Windows resources. I already mentioned this. Global, it's a type of group that can be used to provide access to resources in another domain. In this group, you can only add only you can add only accounts from the same domain. Sorry, brain fart, which the group was created. A global group can be added to other global and local groups, so they can kind of intersect a little bit. Sorry, guys, just trying to get a lot done. Universal is recommended to use in a large Active Directory force. So that's what we probably have at work, to be frank with you. Using this group scope, you can define roles, which I'm sure we help define roles, and manage resources that are distributed across multiple domains. We only have one, no, wait. We have two domains because we have two sides of the network. We have something called instructional, which is for you guys, essentially, to log in and do whatever you need to do. And then we have non-instructional, which is the opposite end of it, where it's for everyone's an administrator, uh clerical, think about it in the sense of like accounting would work be in there, who else would be in there, any department under the sun that is the student facing, I guess you could say, is in there. That makes some sense for non-instructional. So there's two sides of it. So yeah, you probably use universal. If your network has many branches connected by WAN channels, which means wide area network, it is desirable to use universal groups only for rarely changing groups. Yeah, I think that's what we do because our groups don't change, because changing the universal groups causes the global catalog to be replicated throughout the whole enterprise. What essentially is saying, if you make a change to a group and you say, oh, I don't know, add a new section for subsection for, I'm trying to think of a different department. You make clerical too. If they only work for the vice president, the president, and whatnot, then it would cause your whole catalog, what's referring to as all the search features, would be copied to both databases again over. It would just rewrite over everything. It'd be a pain in the butt because it's a lot of people to go through, and a lot of groups to go through. Does that make sense? I will take that as a resounding yes. All right, let's go on to the next slide. All right. So what can you do in AD? You can change the AD group scope or type, but there are several conditions. You can convert global security groups to a universal if the group is not part of another global group. So it cannot be part of another group. If global group, then you can convert it to universal. You can convert a local domain group into a universal one if another local domain group is not added to the list of its members. Similar to what you can do with the global, but this is for the local domain, which is what we're going to be making. But we're not going to convert it because we're not going to have this gigantic scope of a why thing of a wide area network and all that stuff to cover it. We're just making a small domain for us to use in class. A universal group can be converted to a local domain group without any restrictions, so you can go kind of backwards with that, which is pretty interesting. A universal group can be transformed into a global one if it does not contain another universal group as a member. No, it's pretty straightforward. Don't need to worry about that. So you saw what AD looks like for searching for people, and these are all just groups of administrators and different kinds of people. After Active Directory creation, built-in groups, several predefined built-in security groups with a domain local scope are created. So when you make your Active Directory, what we're going to do on Thursday, it'll make most of these areas for you. You don't have to go through and just create them. These predefined groups can be used to control access to shared resources and delegate specific administrative permissions on the domain level. Default AD groups are in special AD containers built in. So yeah, that's what I just said. They're all just going to get pre-built and they'll be there. You can add yourself to whatever group you want, but I don't think guests should have the same rights as an admin, correct? You don't want them breaking something. Like I asked earlier, who shouldn't have it, right? Some of you said teachers, some of you said security, some of you said, oh, I don't know. What y'all said? Security guards, customers. Yeah, customers was a big one. Popular one. So yeah, again, you wouldn't want those people to have access to your domain to mess things up. Only user accounts can be added to these groups. You cannot add built-in AD groups to each other group nesting. So you can't just combine groups essentially with their pre-builts. You can do specific different kinds of ones. I think I'm going to have you guys make an accounting one or whatever you want to call it, and we'll go from there. Or add user-defined domain groups to them. So just telling you we can and can't do. So Active Directory group naming conventions, best practices. So why is this important? So if you're making a domain, oh, I don't know, give me something that isn't Amazon or a school, some or the IRS. Give me something, anything. YouTube. Well, they're part of the Google domain, right? But what would they call their domain for their hardware? YouTube domain or YTD? So it's got to be something pretty simple. What I'm saying is, for example, if you had McDonald's and you had servers in the McDonald's, and I don't mean the people that run around on roller skates like they do at Sonic's, would you want to call it M McDonald's domain, which is super long, or would you call it MCD for short and just use an abbreviation? So that's what it's kind of telling you. Use only English characters for group names. For the first letter of the group name, use the letter that indicates the whatever. You can find out the group type and the group properties in ADUC, which you don't have to worry about, but is community group types in the name for the global group specify. Yeah, so that's where you would specify what you want the group to be called: store, marketing, shop, managers, etc., etc., etc. So you want to have for what? McDonald's managers, and it will be for I don't know, system managers, which should technically be grouped in managers. I don't know, like clerk, stock team, whatnot. For YouTube, they would have administrators, power users, regular users, which would be all the interns, I would argue. Then they would have financing. They would have different departments like anybody else. And domain local group names specify the purpose of each group to have access permissions. So you would just literally write a small blip of what it's for the group, and then you would just want read or read write. That's what R and RW stands for. Like, what do you want them to be able to do? Since domain local groups are used to set access permissions to various resources, this should be reflected in the group name. Uh, yeah, but you would kind of know off the top of your head. I would argue accounting would have read and read write because they need to access files, right? Like Excel files or database files from HR to know where to send a check or whatnot, or what bank versus how much they're paying you based on what they have in their Excel sheets or whatever they're using for their monetary tracking, right? It's all a little different. I think peach trees or whatever it's called. They use for that kind of software, or they do it through third party. That's also the other way you go around it. So you saw this recently. This is what it looks like, right? Create an Active Directory group using AD snapping. You just right click new, anywhere you want in there, and you can click group. It's pretty simple. Then you would be greeted with this. This is what comes up next. It's blacked out because I forget where this is from, but don't worry about it. So, a group of remote employees. What's the group scope? Global, group type, security. Because they're not distribution, right? They're not an email list you're going to reach into. Pretty straightforward. You click OK. Come on, slide, do your job. So then we just hit members and you just add people. It's pretty straightforward. You can actually do a big ad for people. Let me show you. It would pop up with all the people, and you can just highlight if you want to do a bunch of people, then add to group. But look, you can do disable account, enable account, move. You can move it to a different area. It's pretty straightforward with it, honestly. You would click just add group for this instance. Well, you want to specify what objects are in there. So it's just a note I have in here. Note that when adding members to groups, which we were doing from the previous slide, right? Searches are performed only for the following types of objects: users, groups, and service accounts. If you want to add an AD object to a security group, such as a computer, so if you have like a domain computer, and you want to specifically use it or link it to them, you would add it under the objects type up here, which you would select. And check options contacts, computer. Now you can select all these types of Active Directory objects. So they will be there. I guarantee you. Like their contact information, the group they're part of, and all that, it's in there. So in the services for accounts, like what's enabled, what's not enabled, it's part of that too. You would just click OK. Then you can see what they're members of, right? This is part of California IT department, California server admins, domain users are the part of these three groups. Primary group is domain users, it's a master group, and you can set. There's no need to change primary groups unless you have Macintosh clients, which we're not going to have. POSIX compliant application. That's point of sale indexes. I think is that what it's referring to. That's something ancient. Don't worry about it, guys. We will not run into it. We're not going to be messing with grocery store terminals or anything like that. Okay. Sorry if I just got your hopes up and dashed them about creating your own cash register world system. Okay. I'm sorry. That was a joke. So we've seen this, but this is what it'll look like after we've installed it to create groups within the server. This is if you're doing it a little differently. This is through the Active Directory system that'll be plugged in after we install things. So we do new, go to group, and you will fill it out. This is for California sales and description, notes, whatever you want to call it out, security type. That's all. You can even stop it from being deleted. Look, protect from accidental deletion. Look, it's happened, right? We've all been fiddling around, not paying attention. We hit delete on something, or we click on an email where we're meant to click on, and next thing you know, you got spam or whatnot. We've all been there. That's why that check mark's there. So make sure you don't delete anything. So you fill it all out like you normally would. Nothing crazy, nothing's changed. And just do next. So here you're just adding people. Same way. Just differently through the server versus doing it the other way with the snap-in plugin for AD. They work the same. This is just a different way of doing it. This is one for global searching as well. So you can go next. We talk about group policies and this stuff grand. Group policy definition. It's a hierarchical infrastructure that allows a network administrator, which would be you guys and me, in charge of Microsoft Active Directory to implement specific configurations for users and computers. Group policy is primarily a security tool and can be used to apply security settings to users and computers. So the best thing I'll tell you about group policy is this. It's what you can use to just restrict things. So I also service the jail lab. Yes, we have a lab in the county jail here where I work with Santa College, and I service it. So I had to play a lot, and I mean a lot, with group policies to disable things in Windows. Well, what do I mean by disabling things in Windows? Yes, that's right, Vincent. So, should they have access to system properties? No. Should they have access to be able to do a run command? No. Do they have access to the start menu? Technically, no, because all the software they need is going to be pinned on the menu bar at the bottom. Well, they took off. That's fine. And you kind of get to the point where you kind of lock yourself from doing so much testing. You kind of disable something you needed, so now you can't even get back into the GPO screen because you disabled it by accident. You're like, oh crud. So guess what you have to do? Start over. So group policies can be fun to mess with, but they can get dicey because you will turn things off. You shouldn't be turning off that you need. So you will experience that. Don't worry. It's part of it. So you understand. If you break something, guess what you learn? Not to break it again, right? So you'll memorize things like that. That's how I am a firm believer of, if you break it, you'll learn. That's the best way I can describe it. And it's the truth. It's kind of what sticks, right? You learn what not to touch. Like, don't touch a really hot faucet if the hot water's running, right? You burn yourself, that kind of deal. Anywho, term describe a group of policies, and policies are not applied directly to group. Policies can be linked to sites, domains, and organizational units. Yes, that will be a question on the midterm. I'm not kidding. So remember that. What can you do with group policy? I just mentioned about controlling user environments, right? Because I service the jail, what I can turn off, I can turn on. Hell, you can even lock the background to whatever color you want. If you want floor 2 to have nothing but a dark blue background, guess what? Dark blue background, so you know you're on floor 2. If you want, I don't know. I bring up counties because it's a department everybody has, right? You want them all to have black backgrounds. Guess what? Accounting has all black backgrounds. So if you're walking by and you just look at your screen, just happen to walk by, you see the background's black, you know you're in accounting. Organization, I guess, is also part of the key. Then if you start menu options, which I talked about, you turn them off, turn them on, limit access to things. Wallpaper, I just talked about color, so on and so forth. Prevent users from using control panel. Yes, you can turn that off. Control the computer settings. Can they access the brightness of the screen? Can they access the resolution? Things like that. Configure DNS client settings, which you will not be doing. Don't worry, that's going to be handled by the server. In reality, you don't need to use a group policy for that. Configure the time server client computer use. Yeah, that's something you will be doing. We will be making users. You'll be limiting one, disabling one, and you will see what it does. You will, I think, have to mess with the clock though for it to, air quotes, work in one instance. You can distribute software. That's true. Through group policy, you can. You can force software installation, but it's not really done that way anymore in the industry. It's all now pushed out through. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Intune. That's what's kind of taking over for most of the admin tools for Microsoft's end of the world. So what essentially it is remember I mentioned imaging isn't imaging anymore, and it's all kind of just pushed out now. What essentially it is, you get the MAC address, which is the hardware address of the machine you're going to be receiving or you have, and you input it into a database for it. And you can tell Intune, hey, grab this machine in this group with this MAC and this MAC and whatever. When they hit a network, doesn't matter which network, it can be a network at work, network at home, network across the ocean, doesn't matter. When they hit the internet, they're going to ping home. And that Mac will be hit the internet, it'll be resolving, yes, okay. Intune will push everything you have in a package that has to go to it. So it could be Office, it could be Teams, it could be Adobe, it could be anything you need will be there ready to go, just waiting for you. And then after that, it's off to the races. It'll even install a newer version of Windows you need on top of it, and you're ready to go. So that's technically not used anymore, but it's still used in smaller companies for group policy. So allow for easy optional software solutions through add and remove programs. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. The other thing is a lot of small businesses still going to work with older versions of servers, so it's kind of good to know it. So you will run into it. If you work like for a small corporation and you're a one-man IT department, it's kind of hard because you're juggling multiple hats. How many of you have had to juggle multiple hats before at a job or at home? Multiple responsibilities. Any of you? It can get tiring, huh? But that's, excuse me, but that's just how it is when it comes to smaller businesses. When it's bigger corporations, public entities, they have teams dedicated to this stuff, and your role is kind of defined, but you still wear multiple hats here and there, and you kind of get used to it. But it's not to the extent of if you were like in a small business where it's a one-man show kind of deal. No, okay, we're good. We're good on time. Moving on. So what are the benefits? User benefits. Access to files either offline or online. Yeah, I get true. Consistent environment. Yeah, it's not going to change much. And files are essentially backed up to the server, essentially. So that's good. So for admin, well, what's the benefit of you being the administrator? What benefits do you get from this kind of group policy stuff? So all management's in one place for computers and user settings, which you can apply as a blanket policy. What that means is from the server, you can implement all the changes that take place. Application distribution can be handled. That's true, but I mentioned that's not really done that way anymore. We won't be doing that as a lab. Maybe thinking about it. Backup, yeah, you can back up all the software and data you want if you have enough space. And security is all done through one point of contact, right from that machine. So here's where they're stored. Local group policies are stored in gpedit.msc. What that looks like, pull it up on mine. I'm just going to run the command. So give me a second. This is what it looks like on your computer. I guarantee you this is what's going to look like whenever we run it on our server. Here's where everything you can kind of mess with. I'm not going to mess with anything. There's nothing I want to break. But I mean, for all the software settings. I see I have nothing because I don't really need to do anything. But yeah, see, you can turn stuff on and off. Control panel. Personalize. See? Make this bigger. You can do all kinds of things. Okay, for specific start background, but see, you have these kinds of server Windows 8.1 or RT. We have 2016. We'll be fine. We might mess with this kind of stuff and see if it works or not. I'm still thinking about it for a lab for Unit 5. So, non-local group policy objects are stored in sysvol. Link to sites, domains, or OUs. Operating, God, it's operating, can't think of the top of my head. Hold on, my Google Food's rusty. Operating, God, I can't think. Yes, I'm looking it up because I forgot. Organizational unit, geez. I'm not used to using OUs anymore. We don't really mention that anymore. But it's there. It's all part of this. Go back to my controls here. So here's what it will look like from the server side of thing. We implement group policies. Yes, we'll be implementing some. Don't worry. That's all part of it. It's pretty straightforward. You would just right click and just add stuff together. But group policy and Active Directory go together. They are hand in hand. They are married. They are just one. They're just one big kind of happy family, right? See, it looks almost the same, right? Look. They all go together. So we already made a DNS in reality, but you still have to install a DNS separately. We'll do this later. Don't worry. I mentioned what domain name does, right? It translates names to IPs and back and forth for the machine and to reach the server and the server to reach the machine back and forth. Yes, we'll be promoting the server to doing that. It's just the install pictures. It's pretty straightforward. We've seen those two screens before. This is what it's going to look like. Role based, right? Because we're not doing remote. It's only one server. Check off a box. That's what you're going to add. Pretty straightforward stuff. DNS server here, we have Active Directory. But this is, again, we're not doing this till the week after this Thursday because we don't meet Tuesday. So yeah, you need next. Same deal, guys. We're almost done. Restart it. And this will be just coming up after the restart. I know I'm breezing through it, right? This is what the install looks like, okay? Just giving you an idea. For that, you need to do this. You need to create a forward look zone. What does that mean? In other words, this is the range you can look through going forward. You can do one for reverse. You're going backwards. That's essentially what it is. So new zone. It's pretty fast. You just punch in an IP. See, forward lookup zones are used to map host names to an IP address. Easy peasy. Reverse lookup zones are used to map IP addresses to host names. DNS are going forwards and backwards. It's essentially what it is for DNS. You're really configuring nuts and bolts with it when you do this. That's all it's for. Yeah, it's just a picture of the install. It's pretty quick. Primary zone, you're making a primary because it's the only one you're making. You're going to store it in Active Directory. It's going to combine with it, even though it's already a DNS server prior to this. Same thing. It's the same thing for the reverse one. But you run into this here. You want to do secure dynamic updates for 80. You're not doing any of these. Finish. The new zone, this is for backwards. It's the same thing. primary because it's the one you're going to set up. For this one, it's a little bit different though. So you want the second one because you have a domain. You don't want to put the force. It's your domain you want to point to. And next, and IPv4 is what we're using. We're not using anything other because I haven't learned IPv6 yet, to be frank with you. Then you would enter your first 3 octets of your network. So for example, using my machine here, just putting mine in, I would be entering 192.168.56. Then the range after that is set already. You don't worry about it. You don't know anything with starting from here to here. And whatever comes after, that's where it's ranging in. Or for backwards talk or whatever you want to call it. Or it goes to reverse. That's essentially it. You would hit next. Allow, same difference, and you're finished. And that's it. So that's pretty much all lecture. I know it's not a lot, but that's the next 2 units. So we're doing lab this Thursday. We're doing lab next Thursday. We don't meet the following Tuesday. I will have a post on the day that, hey, don't meet tonight. But that's all I have for you guys tonight. Does anybody have any questions about the lab so far? Does anybody need any help? I can stick around a little while longer if you guys need help. If not, you are free to go.
I only have a comment.
Yeah.
Coming from an environment that was Windows based and having to work with Google Admin Console,
Mhm.
that the same concepts that you're teaching about for the OUs and assigning permissions and all that, they apply there too. So it's a general concept that can be helpful in any kind of role. So I know this is all Windows based, but it's a helpful concept in general that the organizational unit applying security for something at a particular location and it's only applied at the location. It's very helpful in how that all correlates and how everything works like that.
Good to know. I might have to add that in, but I don't have Google admin rights anymore. In the prior district I worked at is where I had a lot of that, but it was before I was teaching. So not much I can do there, but it's good to know it carries over. A lot of the
Well,
Google
yeah,
certs.
it's amazingly helpful just understanding the concept of how the directory and where things are located and how the permissions are associated with that thing at that location are only there and how things inherited from higher up in the tree and all of those concepts are all apply and are all good for general purpose things.
Yeah, good to know. Everybody else. Anybody else got anything to say? Need help? Anything? I'm here. All right. Stop the recording. I'll post the recording up by Friday. So